Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for having me again as the keynote speaker. I'm going to talk about a paper written with Thien. She's from uh, the management school and Lancaster University. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a very um, new working paper that we are writing at the moment. The paper is about the relationship between CEO asset compensation and financial reporting, misreporting in the US stock market. Okay, we're going to be using um, a quite popular method to measure financial misreporting, um, but with a few tricks. Okay? So we will be using this Benford's law as a way to measure financial misreporting using data from firms. And the work is still in progress, so please do not submit the paper yet now. Okay, we're still trying to improve and polishing a few of the research. So this is one of the few papers that I'm trying to fit in the current research agenda of myself, which is in the relationship between financial misreporting and organizational management. I'm trying to see the effects of different financial incentives within an organization and how the organization will tend to deal with financial risk-based reporting and financial transparency of the business. I have had a few papers published on this area. For example, the papers on NGOs and charities in the UK and in Uganda. The papers are on the slide, and I'm very much happy to share with everyone on this. So the key idea of this research agenda is to think about a new measure of financial misreporting that is going to be easy to replicate and also cost effective. We are going to look at improving the usefulness, trying to avoid the false positive of our tests on using Benford's law as a way to effectively flag up any financial misreporting. We're trying to expand the study method into the corporate world, the industry, in which we can be using a different measure of profits, different measure of incentives, to think about how those can actually affect firms' intention to manipulate. So we know that it's a huge topic of interest because incorrect or misleading financial reports have collectively been a huge damage to the US economy, and there are references saying trying to quantify the damage to the US economy before the financial crisis up to $500 billion. And misleading or manipulation, financial manipulation has been cited often as the cause of the financial crisis, which has eroded the trust of shareholders, investors in the stock market, as well as the US economy. So, studying this area has been of very much interest to not only academics, but also for policymakers. However, the evidence for the causes and consequences of financial frauds remained pretty much inconclusive. So we're trying to look at a key factor or in determining the level of financial transparency of a firm. We're focusing on CEO compensation package, which relies on the principal margin model. There are two ways to think about it. So it could be the case that a more generous and a performance-based model can really work as a way to incentivize managers by linking the managers' wealth and richness to the firm's value, so that they would put a little bit more effort to really work hard to improve the firm value, right? So there's no need to actually misreport the data. However, because a higher firm's value, higher stock price are heavily linked to the compensation, CEOs or managers can divert their effort to help improve firms' value into actually doing some creative accounting and doing some financial fraud to inflate reported earnings and perform some earning management. Right? So we were trying to look at the link between different levels and different forms of CEO compensation packages and the tendency to misreport. There are a few papers addresses the current state of the literature on how people can actually do this. The literature is pretty much ongoing. The key problem within the literature has always been trying to find a less biased measure with fewer false positives of identifying some misreporting. I think that the most current and popular method is to use the Jones's model from the paper in 1991. However, the key criticism is that there lacks of knowledge of how the accrual was formed, what are the determinants of the income accruals, and the incorrect result can be caused by some misallocation of resources, misallocation instead of intentional fraud. Okay. Some other methods are looking at risk assessments or the AAER's methods. However, even though we have a better accuracy of those who are actually providing some incorrect statement, there would be an issue of the untimeliness and the lack of predictionary power in the case that we are not going to have the data before the fraud has been committed and has been publicly available, right? The other problem associated with the current methods is that CEOs and managers can actually engaged in creative accounting to avoid the scrutiny of their financial data. Right? They know how it works, and they can actually trying to make sure that they're following any of the popular methods that we are trying to use. So in our paper, we're going to look at the use of Benford's law as a very cost-effective method to identify potential misreporting. There's a revival of growing interest in economics and finance in the application of this method. Right? There are lots of new papers coming out in the economics, finance, accounting, management literature on how we can use Benford's law to further measure information inaccuracy. We're trying to use this CEO compensation as the potential source of motivation to inflate reported earning and earning management. Okay, so before I start going into details, here are some summaries of the results. We found about roughly 25% of the firms in our data seemingly misreported their publicly available record. The CEO equity-based compensation is not positively correlated with misreporting. This is pretty much consistent with traditional principal relation theory in the sense that if equity incentives which are going to be realized in a long term, would be associated with a better performance of the economy of the firm, so that there's no need to really cook up the book. There is a positive relationship between bonuses and misreporting, similar to a few other finance literature in the 1980s, but that's pretty much inherent when we set up the results. And finally, we found that firms with a higher potential levels of misreporting seems to be smaller, seem to be performing worse, and seems to have less resources available for promotion. So what is the Benford law? It is simply talking about a mathematical phenomenon concerning the frequency distribution of leading digits in a naturally occurring dataset. For example, if we look at this number, then the first digit is going to be number 2. Okay? So the law is saying that the first digits are not going to be evenly distributed, but decreasing in a logarithmical scale. Okay, for example, in this case, you can see the first number 1 appearing as the first digit for about 30% of the time, number 2 appearing as the first digit for about 18% of the time, and so on. So it's not evenly distributed, but rather logarithmically decreasing. So the key premise underlying the method is going to be accounting-related data should be following the Benford distribution. And there has been papers on this showing that we should expect the premise to hold for accounting and finance-related data. And the larger the deviation from theoretical distribution, the higher the level of the potential errors. Okay, so we can use the deviation from the theoretical distribution as a way to measure the intensity of the potential misreporting. Okay, it's been used widely in economics recently. So one of my papers in 2020, tax evasion, auditing, financial services, and so on. Okay, it has been used pretty much widely for the last few years. There is a revival of interest in this method. However, there's very much little attention paid on the use of the method to think about the zero compensation packages. Okay, the closest paper that we are looking at is this paper from a Korean financial reform and how stock options affect the different levels of misreporting in the banks in Korea, in South Korea. So there has been any sort of new in this area. So we're going to be using around 20,000 public firms in the US, chosen from the 2012 to 2019. We intentionally chose this period to avoid the effect of the financial crisis in 2009, and also just before the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're trying to look at what's going to happen during the normal period, the normal bull markets of the stock market. Okay, so there's perhaps less incentive more incentive to actually benefit from the bull run in the historic bull run in the stock market in the US. We're going to be marching data with the executive compensation from Execute Comp, and we collected the firm financials from company staff. We'll be excluding any CEOs who worked on more than 2 companies, and then we're going to remove the top 1 and the bottom 1 percentiles of the data, and then clean the data for missing amount. We're going to be using 2 measures for the deviations from the Benford's law. We're going to use the mean absolute deviation and the goodness fit tests. For example, the Kolmogorov and the Smirnov KS test are non-parametric methods to actually measure the deviation between two distributions. We're going to focus on the data that has at least 100 non-zero financial items, because that will be giving enough statistical power for the Benford test. We're going to aggregate the data over 2 years so that we can obtain enough non-zero financial data. And because we are having 10 years in total, we will be having 5 periods of data for a panel analysis. We'll be collecting other firm characteristics, and we're going to aggregate them over 2 years periods. So finally, we're going to have about 66,000 firm period observations available for analysis. So this is one example of the Benford score. So if we look at the aggregate distribution of all of the numbers in the data that we obtained, as you can see, they are pretty much following the Benford distribution. Okay, this is one example of a firm that follows the Benford's law or the Benford's distribution. You can see we should be expecting to see a clear decreasing distribution, frequency distribution of the first digits, and they are within acceptable errors. For those firms that are not following the Benford distribution, we clearly see a discrepancy between the theoretical distribution, the red line, and the actual distribution, the blue bars. Okay, so we clearly see that there are firms who would not be following the Benford distribution, and we call them non-conforming. That has potential misreporting issue. And for the ones that have clear distribution, Benford distribution, we're going to be using them as the conforming firms, and we do not have any concern for their potentially misreporting data. Okay, so we'll be using 2 methods to measure the compensation package of the CEOs. We'll be looking at the actual levels of the compensation. So we'll be looking at a salary, so that's going to be paid annually, as well as the bonus, that's going to be short-term and related to performance-based. We're going to look at the equity-based compensation as well. So we'll be looking at the stock and options awards that will be paid according to some plan adopted and approved by the board of directors. So that's going to be a little bit more long-term than the annual bonuses. We're going to be looking at the percentage of each of the levels within the percentage, well, for our sensitivity check. Okay, so we're trying to see whether and how the different levels of the different types of compensation would have the effects on the misreporting levels. Now, for control variables, we're going to look at the CEO characteristics, for example, tenure, gender, the duality nature of the CEO of the firm, for example, if they are also being a chairman or chairwoman. We're going to be looking at the share ownership of the CEO within the firm's control for CEO characteristics. For firm's characteristics, we're going to look at the leverage ratio. We will be looking at the firm performance, so the Tobin's Q ratio. Firm size, we'll be looking at the total assets of the firm, operational efficiency, the ROE, and whether the firm has experienced a loss of earning or enjoying some positive earning. So this is our summary of variables, and you can see we are expecting to be seeing some negative effect of salary and stock awards on the level of misreporting, because they are directly related to the long-term performance of the firm, right? However, for those that are a little bit more short-term, and depending on the short-term performance, for example, bonus and stock option, we will be expecting a positive relationship. If you want to maximize the performance-based awards in a year, in a short-term period, then you have more incentive to actually trying to engage in some manipulation, information manipulation. And we have some of the other senior income characteristics with some of the expected signs on misreporting in as well. And there's some summary statistics, nothing really outrageous here to be looked at. Stock option remains the highest level of compensation to say CEO, followed by option, right? So the board of directors really trying to design the compensation of a CEO to be heavily correlated to the stock market, the stock price of the fund. Also looking at the bonus level seems to be the lowest, but that's going to be paid annually with some level of discretion of the board of directors, right? And we can also see that there is a lot of variation within our data set for bonus level and also for the stock level compensations. That's pretty much varying, whereas the salary level pretty stable across the CEOs. Okay, and for an average CEO would be with the firms for around 6 to 7 years, and around 95% of the firms are now CEO. Okay. Now, what is about the key idea behind this? So we're trying to see about CEO compensation on misreporting for sensitive. We're going to control for CEOs and firms' characteristics. In this case, we are not going to claim any causality yet, because we are trying to exploit a few exogenous shocks in our data to further improve in our causality claim, but not for now. For now, we're going to explore the relationship, the correlational relationship between conversations and the IC to look for. Then our method is trying to account as many potential confounders as possible before we explore a little bit more with the causality channel. Okay, so this is going to be our regression equation. We're going to focus on the coefficient on the CEO conversation. We're going to use different levels of CEO conversations packages in this case. We're going to check in using the percentages of each of the type of the conversation relative to total conversation package. Okay, we're going to include the time variancy and different characteristics, as well as including the or industry fixed effect, as well as the time fixed effect. Okay, so we're trying to account for all of these factors, constant between firms or industry, and constant across time. So what are the results? As you can see, if we use different types of conversation, we're going to have pretty much persistent results. So if it's going to be bonus short time periods, we're going to have a positive correlation. However, we're going to use a little bit more long-term relationship, long-term conversation. For example, salary, that is very much tied with the long-term stability of the firm, as well as the stock level and the option level conversation. We are seeing some negative effects. If we are using the chaos test instead of using the MAD test, we are seeing pretty much the same result across the different specifications. So here we are controlling for all of the control variables as well as the industry and the VFX effect. And in all of these cases, we're clustering the standard errors at the industry and time of the year level or periods level. Okay. If we are going to use the percentages of different types of conversations, so the percentage of orders relative to the total conversation, the percentage of salary relative to conversation, stock relative to the total conversation, and options relative to the total conversation, we are again seeing the very much similar results. Okay. So what are the key results of our very much preliminary research? We have some idea for how we can improve this in the future. So we found roughly 20% of the sample potentially misreporting their data. What we are planning to do next is to try to match our data with the restatements information, so we can analyze the correlation between our measure using Benford form and the actual material information of misreporting. Okay, whether the firm actually has to restate their financial reports. We have found some pretty much interesting correlation and relationship. So we found that conversations via salary, stock, and options negatively relating to financial reporting, misreporting. And if we think about the principal and agent, purely fixed performance-based packages seems to be helping the firm in improving the values of the company, and then it seems to reduce the potential of the misreporting. We are also seeing the positive effects of correlation of a short-term bonus, which can be one-off perk on the tendency of firms to misreport. Okay, so I think about this as some short-term incentive component can exacerbate the tendency to misreport, which is more or less tied to a more long-term performance of the firm. So all of these results are controlled for using the firm performance and also CEO characteristics. So we are pretty much account for the nature of the firms and the nature of NGO. However, we're not claiming that this is a causal result, and we need to explore a little bit more on this topic. And we have a few analysis, a few mechanism analysis in which we show that firms with higher misreporting levels seem to be smaller, seems to be more stagnant, seem to be underperforming. We are still working actively on this paper to further explore the mechanism as well as to establish the causality here. So thanks very much for your attention, and I hope to